Hey, it's Chef Scubes. Welcome back to Scubeskitchen. Today on the show, I'm talking with Tim Finley. Tim is a classically trained chef, owner and operator of Fennelly's Irish Pub in Elkader, Iowa. And when it comes to Star Wars, he's kind of a big deal. Before we get started, just a reminder that if you enjoy the show, don't forget to leave a review. And if you want early access to episodes plus exclusive monthly bonus episodes, consider becoming one of our Patreon members. You can find details at patreon.com/Scubeskitchen. All right, let's do it. Tim, how are you?
I'm not too bad at all. We spent the weekend in Chicago. Family and I did. It's about 4.5, 5 hours away. So we were over there. We went to a convention. Just sort of chilled out for the weekend, ate some good food, did some nerd stuff, sort of a good reset.
Convention, I assume Star Wars.
It was a general comic convention there, C2E2. I did Star Wars stuff. My daughter did other random comic stuff. My son did into just the new costume he had.
Today's a big day, you know.
Yeah.
You do? You know what I'm talking about?
Well, it's April 5th. I know that much. At least that's...
Now, I may have misspoke because in Europe, the timing for new shows and episodes is different from the U.S. So for me, April 5th is season 3, episode 6 of Mandalorian.
Oh, yep. Yeah, that dropped this morning. Usually... I get to work a little extra early on Wednesdays, and I'll do all my extra prep work. I can usually chisel out 40 minutes of free time, and I watch that. Then I start the rest of my day usually. So, yeah.
You are a true fan. You will get to work early to watch the episode.
Yeah.
Tim, I wrote down in my notes that we're pretty much going to talk about Star Wars the entire time and a little bit of cooking. So we'll see how much cooking we can actually get into. But I love Star Wars. I always have. And when The Mandalorian came out, I was such an obsessive fan. I loved season 1. I loved season 2. I have not seen one episode of season 3.
I will avoid all spoilers at this point then. I don't like people who spoil things, so I can all I'll say is I'm loving it. It's great. You know,
Yeah?
Just loving it.
I mean, it's just as good as the last 2 seasons.
Oh yeah. I've been saying like I'm not a vocal TV watcher. You know, I'd be awful at a reaction video type thing. I'd just be sitting there like, maybe a thumbs up or a smile.
Just tell me, did they kill somebody off?
Not yet. No, not really.
Not yet. You sound like they may.
I could see them killing somebody, you know, just to increase the stakes or whatever. But they, you know, Star Wars doesn't like killing people. They always seem to somehow come back.
Moff Gideon was obviously the main bad guy, right, in season 1 and 2 with his dark saber. Is he back for season 3?
They've talked about it, but they haven't shown him yet. I think my fan theory is they're going to introduce him and Thrawn to kick off the Ahsoka series. That's my theory on it.
Are there a lot of these fan theories going around?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Of course, I'm in the Mandalorian Mercs, so we're the Lucasfilm recognized costuming group for the Mandalorians. And I'm also in the 501st Clone Troopers division, so I have a clone trooper as well. So I've got chats and Discords and Facebook chats, friends around the state and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we've got spoiler launches. So as soon as we watch, we're all in there like, oh, my God, did you see this and all a theory on that? And, you know, all that kind of stuff comes forward. Which is nice to have that kind of technology and stuff like that, because I live in remote Northeast Iowa, and there's like 2 other Star Wars fans in town, you know, and I don't chat with them very much and stuff. So, you know, we definitely get people that come in the restaurant. You can sort of see over my shoulder here, I've got a couple of my things displayed in the restaurant, and people come in like, oh, is someone a Star Wars fan? Or maybe that's Star Trek. Is that Star Trek?
Oh, no.
You know,
no.
And I'm like, it's both, but, you know, Star Wars, it's Star Wars, you know. So,
are you a Star Trek fan? I feel like you're usually one or the other.
I do enjoy Star Trek because they're 2 different worlds. They're 2 different things. Like Star Trek is the utopian, hey, we figured everything out and everything's good and we're expanding knowledge and social commentaries, where Star Wars is the dystopian, you know, things still don't work. We got space travel, but, you know, your engine might blink out on you, you know, those type of things.
I prefer Star Wars. I like both. Yeah. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek. I mean, the original movies, and they're phenomenal. But Star Wars Star Wars was like the first trilogy, but I'm talking like, episode 4, 5, 6, starting in 77, which was a little before my time. I don't want to age myself, but I mean, it was the first trilogy movie where I was like a super fanboy about it. I loved it. And that was in the late 80s, early 90s. So it had already been out for over a decade, which blows my mind because that, almost 50 years ago, and you have this massive franchise that's still as probably more popular today than it was in the last couple decades. Are your kids as big of Star Wars fans as you?
They are pretty big. They're big. My daughter definitely likes a lot of anime, a lot of other stuff. She has a very wide range. She teaches me stuff. She's like, oh, here's this, Dad, check this out, And I was back in college a Dragon Ball Z fan, so I had to like download the little like teeny windows on the computer through different sharing apps and all that kind of stuff to get to watch those episodes. Like I said, I'm a costume member of the Clone Trooper garrison here, and my son just this last weekend wore his new Clone Trooper outfit at the convention too, so that was pretty cool.
Can you see that?
That one right there. Yep, I'm the red and white one, the Shock Trooper. My son right there is the Captain Vaughn, which was introduced in the cartoon series. He was Ahsoka's number one commander when she returned in the show. And the Ninja Turtle right there, that's my daughter.
It's my favorite.
They had the creator. Yeah. They had the creator of the Ninja Turtles at the convention. So we made that by hand. So that shell is a like EVA foam. The head is like chair padding foam basically. And then she's wearing like one of those green suits, the Green Man suits. And we bought a second Green Man suit and just dissected it and molded it over that head mold that we made. And so we made that. And as the convention was Friday, on Thursday night, we were still frantically painting and sewing to pack up the van to get ready to go after work.
So you make all of these costumes. Cosplay is something that is, it's so big these days. And I never went to a convention. I never did anything like that. The closest I got was I wanted to be a stormtrooper a couple years ago for Halloween, but I wanted to do it right. So I went on Etsy and to look for like a real costume. The thing was $800. And I was like, what? No way. And so, but that must be normal, right? I mean, it must cost quite a bit of money to make these elaborate costumes.
You can build these slower. I sort of went a faster route of getting some of these done just because of my time schedule here at work. So sometimes my Mandalorian kit I did from absolute scratch. I bought a lot of the stuff for those clone troopers all done, pre-done, so I jumped a little bit forward on that. But yeah, each one of those clone kits is between $1,500 and $2,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's it made out of?
It's ABS plastic, so it's all vacuum formed. They make a buck and they heat up plastic, pull it down, vacuum form it to a form, and then you have to cut it out and fit it to your body and all that kind of stuff.
And so you did all the coloring, everything.
I did the helmet, and I bought most of that pre-colored already, just for me, just again, because I was really busy. But again, like a lot of people do it from absolute scratch.
Tell us about that weapon you got. That thing looks sick.
That is a DC-15A. That's all 3D printed. I can stand it on my toes and lean on it. And it's a big chunking weapon, and I have to break it down just to fit it in my transport cases. And the funny thing is that when you walk into a convention with something that big, the security guards just walk straight over to you and like, sir, we're going to need that right now, please. And you have to hand it over. They have to check to make sure it's all plastic and all, kosher and it's nothing real. And
all right, here's another one. So this is a different suit that you have. I mean, This is the Mandalorian suit.
And so that's the club I'm most active in. I'm actually like in the command staff in our local state and everything like that for that. So that one is, the plates are made out of what's called Sintra. So if you think of like a PVC plumbing pipe, but in sheet form, and you cut those out and you heat them and form them to your body and all that kind of stuff. The helmet is made from little girl's bicycle helmet from Walmart and pickle bucks that I cut up and formed into those shapes and stuff like that. And we made a bunch of jokes about it because it's like underneath all that paint is a pink and purple girl's helmet that's with Disney princesses on it. Says like, you can dream big or something on it. We would endlessly joke about I was a Princess Mando and all that stuff. It was really fun building it. And here at the restaurant, I actually have my shop built into the basement of the restaurant. And so, like, if I need to sort of a mental reset on something like that, you know, maybe I'll get to work early, do a little prep work, and just go downstairs and sand or do a layer of paint or something like that. Just sort of clears my head for the day and just...
I see behind you over your shoulder, you've got a couple other droids there. You sent me a picture at some point with those droids in the kitchen, and I used it in one of my videos. I didn't realize that you made those.
I'm also part of the Droid Builders Guild also. And so, yeah, let's see. Over my shoulder there, that's a B-1 battle droid. His name is Roger, we call him, because they all say Roger, so we just named him Roger. And then I've got an IG-11 over there. We call Iggy. Down on the floor, my son actually made a mouse droid, the ones you see on the Death Star. That was our pandemic project. During the pandemic, we could do takeout food, but, so we just sort of moved everything around in the restaurant to make it like a funnel. So you could come in, pick up your food, take it and go. And then we just had the whole 89% of the restaurant that was just completely unused. So I just sort of set up a space. My kids obviously were in school, but like all the schools were remote learning. So we do remote learning with them in the morning. I'd prep up for lunch. We'd cook our lunch, do the lunch service here. And then no one would ever come in yet. We'd be open in the afternoon if anybody wanted it, but it was really during lunch or dinner. And so in the afternoon, we'd do more schoolwork, and then he'd work on like his mouse droid he was building, or like my daughter would work on some art projects. She's really creative too. And then we get into dinner service, and then we head out for the day. It was,
they say it's really hard to find a job that you love or like an office that you love going to, but it's pretty clear that you don't mind going to your restaurant, not only to cook, but to play around with all your craftsmanship stuff.
I live in a small town. There's just not that much help here. And I'm not trying to say that no one wants to work. It's just, there's 1,100 people here and 9 restaurants, so it's just, finding help is just hard because everyone's employed. And so all of our restaurants, we get along, and we basically don't poach employees from each other. We just sort of mutually don't do that, because it would get pretty ugly if we all started poaching each other's employees and stuff. So, during the pandemic, unfortunately, a lot of my employees were all like part-time here, part-time somewhere else. And people retired at their other jobs. I had no hours to give them just because of the restrictions I was under. I had nothing, I didn't have any servers. It was just my wife and I here taking phone orders and handing to-go food out. And so I wasn't able to give them any hours. I had some PPP money that we were able to give them so they weren't like unemployed type stuff. But then very soon after, they had people quit and retire out of their jobs that they were working at. And so they were promoted to full-time employees at their other jobs. So then when everything sort of went back to normal-ish, they were fully employed in a good career. So we weren't able to get them back, which, it sucks because a lot of those employees were with us for 8, 9, 15 years, so,
wow.
But they still come back every so often. We're still in contact with all of them. For St. Patty's Day, obviously we're super busy in here. That's one of our massive days. I was able to get a couple of them to come back and pull a single shift just, to help out, and which is nice.
St. Patty's Day must be huge.
It's funny. The question we get every year is, so are you guys going to do anything for St. Patty's? Are you going to have any Irish food? I'm like, we have Irish food every day of the year. Reuben's, Rachel's, corned beef, we do Guinness. We've had Guinness on tap since the first day we opened. That type of thing, but nobody around here does that. We actually brine our own corned beef on site. I've figured out a recipe a few years ago, which that's a time-intensive process to figure that one out. A good recipe that you're really proud of. So we brine all our corned beef on site, boil it, slice it, make our own Thousand Island dressing. The bakery, we have a bakery in this town. One of my high school, college friends. So I get all my bread from him. So it's locally made bread. The kraut and the cheese we use in it is like smaller batch stuff out of Wisconsin, since we're just 20 miles from Wisconsin. It's easy to get nice stuff from there. So
I love that small town community feel. I moved here. I live in Portugal now. My wife and I do. And we moved from Arizona, which did not have that small town feel. And here, it's just like you're talking about. You know, if you want the best meat, you go down to the butcher. You don't go to the grocery store, or you go to the bread shop down the road, and that's all they do is make bread. And the quality of the ingredients when you live like that is just so much better, and you get spoiled. And now I feel like if I went back, that's one thing I'd be missing. And it sounds like you have that, just some good artisan quality ingredients.
It is. And it's nice because like you get small town stuff like that. People know you, you build relationships with people. When we first opened the bakery, Pedretti's Bakery, they didn't have the pans for the bread I wanted. I mean, they made a rye bread, but it was, like small little sandwich stuff. And I wanted like a nice wide, thick loaf and stuff. He's like, just give me a week. Just give me a week on this. And he came back and he was at a sale because, there's restaurants that close or things get liquidated. He sent me a message like, how about these pans? Like, yeah, that'd be great. So he bought a full set of pans just so he could bake my bread, and obviously now I buy, multiple loaves every week, all that kind of stuff. So it's worth it for him, but it's also, that type of connections that you can build with people around here. Whereas like, if you went to a big bakery or Walmart or Hy-Vee or any of those massive Kroger's chains, they're not going to bake a special loaf of bread for you, because you're just one restaurant, That's the joys of small town living, I guess. I mean, we do sacrifice other stuff. Like if you want an avocado, that's not always available here in Northeast Iowa, but you can get good bread. So that's
tough, man. Avocados are like that's top tier for me on things that I just really love. And, one thing growing up in the Southwest, you had this Mexican food that was so good, just so the best around. And now, that's not a thing anymore. So you grew up in Iowa, you went to school, you went to culinary school in Iowa, and now you have a restaurant and you're living your life in that hometown of yours. You don't hear that very often. Are other families in your town the same way, or is it mostly generations of people that have lived there?
A little bit. My family has actually lived in this town for over 150 years now. That's how long we go back.
I think you own the town at that point.
They were influential in the starting of the bank, but no longer. But no, we don't. But it's interesting because I went to high school with a guy named Brian. And on the wall of my pub, I have a picture of my great-great-grandfather and his great-great-grandfather, because the Finleys and the Orrs have had a farm next to each other since 1846. And the Finleys, the Orrs, the Whittles, the Kelleher's, and I know I'm spacing on a couple other names, all moved basically from the same area of Ireland and then all replanted together. And then they all replanted around the 1840s, and they've all had those farms. They continuously own and operate these farms. And a really good friend of mine, he's heavily Norwegian. His family lives just across the highway from where my family was. And in 150 years, no mingling whatsoever between the Irish and the Norwegians. Yeah. We always joke about that.
Are there a lot of Irish families in Iowa?
Yeah, Northeast Iowa. Every time, I unfortunately haven't gotten to go to Ireland. We actually know our family over there, and we're in contact with them and stuff like that. My aunt and uncle have been over there. My grandmother's been over there. They've been over to visit us, that kind of thing. And every time they go over there, they come over here. Everyone's like, wow, it just really, they always say, it looks like the old country over here. And they say it's amazing. It's the green, the rolling hills. I know a lot of people think Iowa and they think flat. That's sort of western and southern Iowa. You get up here and it's more like the hills like Wisconsin or something like that.
So there's 9 restaurants in your town. Are you the only Irish restaurant?
Yep, we have an Irish restaurant, an Algerian restaurant, a good pizza place, a sports bar, I would call it a family style restaurant, sort of family buffet, base level food. We have one chain restaurant. It's a Subway, but that's as in our county here, that's as chain as you get, like Subway. That's as corporate as you get around here, which I did a stint in that in high school. I was working at one restaurant and it closed down, and did a year or two stint in Subway, which, if nothing else, one thing I've always done throughout my entire career is I take something from every place I've been. And I don't mean like physically take something, but like I learned corporate controls. Like, how do corporations become so big and successful? It's through their control measures, stuff like that, and employee abuses too, unfortunately. But you can see what they do and apply that. Even you can see the bad things they do, and then you can use that as a teaching lesson of, I will never do something like that. I've definitely taken bad lessons, or whatever you want to call it, from a lot of my employers, of like, yeah, I'm never going to act like that, because I remember what it felt like to be treated like that, so I won't, which sort of has given me some of the inspirations on some of my Act Like the Chef submissions when I say those things and stuff.
We'll get into that. I feel like I know you because you submit quite a few content ideas for my videos, and I've used a number of them. It's one of those industries where you don't have to go very far to find ridiculousness. Mm-hmm. Owning your own restaurant for the number of years you have, I mean, you must have a storage closet full of just craziness.
Oh, it is. I mean, the craziest story I have, if you'll allow me to digress for about 5 minutes here.
Absolutely.
We had our grand opening. We opened in May of 2008, which just right before the housing collapse and bubble. Great time to open a restaurant. And then 3 weeks after that, we had a massive flood in our town and half the town was destroyed. So we decided, let's just hold off our grand opening until the town sort of gets back on its feet. So we had our grand opening in September. Like, I invited my professors from college, and my dad and some of his friends are big within the community college area. And so they invited a few presidents of other community colleges to come here. And we invited people for our grand opening and just obviously advertised it. So we were just absolutely packed. And this was Friday night. At the end of the night, we had a DJ and, that type of thing. We're doing some DJ and some karaoke, just like, hey, this is fun. And we're going to do the same thing on Saturday night. Well, most of the important people were coming on Saturday night. On Friday night, we saw a horse and a guy walk past the front of the restaurant. And like, oh, what's going on there? And then he sort of circled around and came back and tried to come to the door. And we're like, oh, no. Ran up to the door and had to, like, no, you can't bring the horse in the bar. You can't.
He's trying to bring the horse inside.
Yes. And his argument was, well, the other bar let me. We shooed him away and he left. I guess he went to 2 other bars and went in there with his horse, because that's what you do sometimes, I guess. So finally, he came back again, and, we were running up to the front door. And like, at this point, me and a couple of friends had our hands on the nose of the horse, because he was bound and determined he was going to bring this horse in the bar. He wanted to do it. And we're like, no, this is not happening. This is not that kind of bar. It's not a dive bar. It's not a bring your horse in the bar place. We finally pushed it out. And I'm like, man, if he comes back again, I'm calling the cops. About 20, 30 minutes later, he shows up again. I'm like, that's it. Pull out the phone. I'm just starting to dial 911. And there's a railing in front of our restaurant. So it's a thin sidewalk where you can be. And the horse got spooked. I feel for this horse, because it didn't end well. But the horse got spooked. It bucked a little bit. He dropped his beer. And of course, he punched the horse as hard as he could, which freaked the horse out even more. The horse bucked and kicked the front windows out of the restaurant.
Wow. Oh my God. I don't even know where to start with that. Number one, are you allowed to drink a beer and ride a horse? Is that drinking and driving?
No, that's we have a few people around here who have lost their license, so they just take horses. And the funny thing is later on you tell this story and they're like, oh, was that Steve? Like, no, this was Jason. Like, oh, I didn't think Jason was in town. I figured it would be Steve.
They all know each other.
Yeah. And everybody knows who the horse riding people are. But yeah, busted the front windows out of our restaurant, and so, I'm on the phone with the cops as this is happening. I'm like, there's a horse trying to get into a restaurant. And there, you can hear them laughing in dispatch. They're like, what? I'm like, there's someone trying to get a horse in my restaurant. And, he just kicked the window out. And they're like, what? So we just shut the bar down at that point. I had, lumber on hand from working on projects here at the restaurant. So my friends and I built up barricades and closed up our windows. We have massive 10 by 10 glass windows in the front of our restaurant. And they shattered out. We had to board them up. We had 2 a.m. on a Friday night. And then basically have a beer or two to cool ourselves down, then be right back here at 7 a.m. the next morning to prep up. And Saturday night is the night that all my professors came from college, and all my teachers. And they're like, oh, why is your window all boarded up? They're like,
let me tell you.
Yeah.
Now, does this carry a lifetime ban for the gentleman on the horse, or I'm sure you knew who he was?
Oh yeah, I knew he was few years older than me in high school. And the funny thing is, the insurance agent was a classmate of mine. And she called and she's like, so Jason? I'm like, yeah. He's like, his insurance won't cover that, but I can make it work. Just, do you agree to what I'm going to say? I'm like, sure, I agree. She's like, fine, we'll get the insurance to cover this. So I don't think this is the first time they've had to pay for damages from that horse.
Yeah, small town living, man. You cannot fuck around in a small town very much because everybody knows what happens and word travels fast. That might be the best story I've heard in a long, long time. Thank you for sharing that. That made my day. So you've got this restaurant, 2008, a flood, a financial crisis, then things are going great for a decade, and then another significant global event, COVID, and your restaurant has persevered both of these events, and you're doing okay. What do you attribute that to?
Part of it, amazing community. You know, I said we're a town of 1,100 people, 9 restaurants, which most big towns can't pull that kind of numbers. You know, it's a beautiful area. We are the county seat, and the people care. During COVID, none of the restaurants around here closed. Like, obviously, we were all, because of state orders, we were all put on takeout food only for a few months or whatever. But no one failed during that point of time. I mean, we had amazing community support. I cannot begin to describe how great this community is and like stepping up and helping people. You know, I said back there, we had the flood in 2008. Obviously, I shut my restaurant down and I'm like, well, I'm going to go help. So we'd be down sandbagging and stuff like that. And no one, it wasn't like a bad thing. Like, hey, you've been open for 3 weeks and now it's closed all of a sudden. Well, everybody knew we were down sandbagging with everybody else. We were doing what we could to help save people's houses. You know, every farmer from around here would just roll into town with a massive horse trailer and just line up and they just pull the next one forward, clean out someone's house, throw it in a horse trailer, be like, okay, that's McMillan's house, and go. And they just park it outside of town and they just clean. I mean, you would not imagine how fast you can clean out a house when you have just a few hundred motivated people, just boom, you know, so people's possessions were saved, you know, and it was just the town pulls together. We went over to the Algerian restaurant, which is right on the river. And my friend and I just grabbed our power tools and we helped barricade the basement because actually I got my start before it was Algerian restaurant. That's what I worked at in high school and stuff like that. So I was intimately familiar with how that building worked and everything. So my friend and I were downstairs in the basement barricading the doors so the flood water wouldn't come in, so we could clear out all their coolers. And then we cleared out all their coolers, moved all their stuff over to our coolers just so they wouldn't lose all their product, you know, and it's just, that's how a small town works.
That's incredible. That's so awesome to hear. And I think if more communities and towns were like yours, the country would be a much better place. I read your bio. I love reading the bios because there's always something that people add that's like, no. Because you did not always want to be, maybe you always wanted to be a chef, but that wasn't your path. You were doing a dentist thing, right? Were you in dental school or wanted to go to dental school?
No, I was. So in high school here, you know, that's one of the problems with small town is that some people that stay are resentful. And a lot of the educators we had at the time were a little on the resentful side. And I don't know, I just don't think they realize what they have. But they tell you like, oh, if you don't get out of town, you're going to be a loser. If you don't graduate and go to college, you know, you're not going to do anything. You know, we had a driven class. Out of 48 kids in our class, I think we have 6 doctors, 10 lawyers. You know, it's a very educated class. And I had a bunch of weird dental work done. I had messed up teeth. And I was like, wow, this stuff is really interesting. And so, you know, like, I don't know, 7th, 8th grade, started realizing that that's sort of the path I think I want to take. I like dentistry. I think that's a really neat study. And you know, maybe even orthodontistry. In our high school, it's small. You don't have all the options. So you take 2 paths. You're going to work a trade job or you're going to college. I started taking all the college prep courses and calculus and physics and, you know, advanced math and advanced sciences. And my junior year, I got a job at the local restaurant, which is called the Keystone. We have a Keystone Bridge, which is the largest double Keystone Arch bridge west of the Mississippi. It's National Historic Monument. So the restaurant right next to it is Keystone. I got a job there and fell in love with it. I was like, I started as a dishy, you know, started out just washing dishes, thought this cooking thing looked pretty cool. I saw, you know, another upperclassman of mine was working the fry cook, helping the other cook out. And I'd asked to be taught, like, can you guys teach me a little bit? And so on my day off, I'd come in and work a shift cooking or fry cooking, and got really good at it. And then one night the chef got pissed off, threw a pan against the wall, and walked out.
That never happens.
And they're like, yeah, that never happens. The chef does never get
Never
mad,
heard that before.
Yeah. So by the age of 16, I was the head cook on a line in a restaurant in a small town. And I was like, wow, I really like this. And so my senior year, I decided, I had already started filling out my applications to go to pre-med, to dental school and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, I'm going to go to culinary school. I like that more. I'm going to shift gears. But one of the fun things, I did have one teacher who was like, yeah, you're way advanced. She was a home ec teacher, but like all the cooking classes, like, yeah, you've advanced past what we teach in high school. So how about you just write your own syllabus? You can just do whatever you want. I was able to work with a local guy who did beer brewing, and I was able to create a few different juice drinks, carbonated, non-carbonated, and then taste panel them to the students. That was, I just set up a table in the hallway and have all the students taste them. So we started serving them, and a couple were like, God, this tastes is funny. And I was like, well, I hadn't tasted it since, we started carbonating it much, and I wanted to save all the product for the students. And the guy that was helping me out with the loaned me his equipment to carbonate it and serve it and all that kind of stuff. He said, I must not have cleaned my kegs good enough because this is alcohol. So in high school, we accidentally, completely by accident, created hooch in the high school
accident,
and served it to all the students.
That's how you run for class president, right there. You just make booze. You get votes for sure.
But so after high school, I went to culinary college. Then I went to Iowa State for hotel restaurant management. Got some more of that under my belt. I had all these ambitions of working in the casino industry, and I sort of thought that was interesting. I did an internship at a local casino, and then I was all prepared after college. I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm going to make it big in Vegas, all that kind of stuff. And then just before my senior year of college, 9/11 happened. And Vegas laid off people left and right. They weren't hiring anybody. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? I'm coming out of college. The hospitality industry is in shambles. So I ended up taking a job at the local casino where I had my internship and put a few years in there, moved to another restaurant, took a management job at another restaurant, and then opened this place.
So I talked to people that went to culinary school, classically trained. I talked to people that never went to culinary school, just learned on the job, cooking at home, whatever. How do you feel about it? I mean, how is your experience at a culinary institute? Are you using those skills today? What would you recommend to young people that really want to get into the industry?
It's a good question. So again, I'm in rural Iowa. And so for here in Iowa, it was great because I went to culinary school and I was exposed to so much more than I'd even seen here in the restaurant jobs I'd worked. And so it was very eye-opening and very interesting. But I could see whereas if you lived in a larger area, like a larger metropolitan area, you could see and experience things without having to go to school. So I don't say that everybody has to go to school. For me, it was great.
What about your kids? Are they into, they work at the restaurant, they help out?
My daughter's actually, I've been teaching her how to cook. She's 16. She can do a few of the things around the restaurant. She's good like that. She does not want to talk to customers at all. She'll drop a plate at a table, but she will go out, look at the floor, hand it. And she is definitely a back of the house type person.
God bless her.
She does not want to go out there.
We need more of those.
And my son, on the other hand, he can talk to people. He can introduce people. He can, if a customer flips him some shit, he can sort of hand it back to them. But so they're heavily involved in the restaurant. They pull shifts.
What's the future? Is this something that you want to hand down to the kids? Is the restaurant going to be open for the foreseeable future? What are you going to do?
For now, I don't have any aspirations to close it down or do anything different. I do like where I am. I walk to work every day. It's a beautiful area. I like the people. So I see having this for quite a long time. If my kids want it, I'm here for them.
By the way, you had a homework assignment that you may or may not have realized. When I first looked at the restaurant, Fennelly's Irish, I was like, that reminds me of a movie. Remember this? It was the movie Cocktail.
Oh, yes, Cocktail. We haven't watched it yet, but I talked to Trish about this. She's like, yeah, we're going to have to watch that. And I think that movie came out when I was in second grade or something like that. So I'm aware of it. I'm a big Tom Cruise fan in general, and I like his movies. And that one somehow slipped through the cracks. And I was reading that, and it talks about how he, went to Jamaica and found his roots, and then he wants to move to Chicago or moved to New York and become a famous bartender. I'm like, very interesting. My wife and I got married in Jamaica.
There you go.
How did we miss this? How did this miss
Now you
our
have
radar?
to, you're obligated. It's a great movie. It's one of those like 80s classics. Definitely watch it. I am going to need to watch, actually my wife was bugging me. She's like, if you're not going to watch Mandalorian, I'm just going to watch it by myself. And I was like, no, you can't do that. So I am now obligated to watch it, which I really want to. And I will connect with you to share my feelings on how the new season is. So speaking of cosplay, what's coming up for you? Any other Star Wars conventions? Any other Mandalorian things?
We have a local convention that I'll be doing in a few months, that type of thing. Star Wars Celebration, I think, started this weekend, but that's actually over in London, so I won't be going to that this year. I went to the one that was in Chicago. My son is working on a Mandalorian costume right now, so that's going to be my big push to get him into that. My daughter is also working on a Mandalorian, and then she's going to be working on a clone trooper, and I've got, I think, 2 other costumes of my own that I'm working on eventually, another clone trooper and another Mandalorian. So the cosplayer's dilemma is you always have like 10,000 projects and not enough time. And
that's amazing. That's a lot of stuff to work on. And how long does it take you to build one of these suits?
It depends. Like some things you can crank out in a few weeks or a few days. And it sort of depends on all the time. Unfortunately, that's like one of our things that we've dealt with after COVID is the change around here at the restaurant is that it used to be pre-COVID. It used to be, lunch was at lunchtime, dinner was at dinner time, and now lunch will have a table at noon, table at 12:15, 2 at 12:30, and it just goes like that through till 5 o'clock. We don't have a downtime anymore. It's just people trickling through all day. Whereas in the afternoon, I might get a 2-hour break, so I do some prep and maybe eat some lunch or go downstairs and put a layer of paint on something just to clear your head after lunch. Or if you had a bad table, you just sort of need to do something else to get out of that headspace. And we don't have that time anymore. And so projects are taking a lot longer. And it's an always changing industry too. Some days you just don't get that lunch break in the afternoon. We have worked, I would say 3 days a week, we probably don't get a lunch break. And, so we're working 12-hour shifts, no breaks, and that gets to be a little rough.
And everybody I talk to, everywhere I go, it seems to be the same. I think it's people working from home, taking their own breaks, going out to lunch when they want to go out to lunch, whether it's 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And the flip side is it's great for people that are the customers, but for the staff, most people don't realize that, they still got to work all day.
People claim that people don't want to work. And I really feel everyone's working a lot. Again, like we have almost no unemployment here at where I live. And so no one's not working. Everyone's working. It's just that there are more jobs than there are people to do them at this point. We had a lot of people retire, and I'm not blaming them for retiring. I would hope to retire someday, hopefully, so I feel if you get there, you earned it. But yeah, it's just sort of the reality of where we're at the moment.
Well, AI might be coming along to take some of those jobs from what I read.
Well, the day AI can properly flip a steak or cook a ribeye to medium rare, it'll be interesting.
Well, all you need is the software. You've got the IG unit, and I've seen him hold a knife. He's got some good knife skills. He just needs some of the software.
They don't stand up well. That picture that I sent you with them standing behind the line in the episode of the Book of Boba Fett, he fights that chef robot, and I'm like, oh my god! I literally saw that, finished the episode, ran upstairs and started moving them all around behind so I could get a picture. Like I have chef robots too, because I thought it'd be silly for social media and all that kind of stuff. And I think one of them is literally leaning forward against the counter because it doesn't like to stand up very well. And the other one, I have a stand that holds it up. I had to move the whole stand behind the line and everything. And yeah, that was one of the things we did after the pandemic is, with not as much help, I'm like, we needed to get rid of some seats because this place will fill up. It's sort of an on-off switch. Some days it's like nothing. And then the whole place, 100 people will walk in all at once. Like, we need to make it not 100. I know, turning away business isn't great, but like if you can't cook food for them, then they're just going to get mad because they don't get their food. And so we cut our seating down to about 60. And so we pulled some tables out, pulled them into storage, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, what are we going to do this open spot? And Trish and I were like, well, we could display our Star Wars stuff up here. And through some weird roundabout channels, I made a comment on a Star Wars actor's Instagram page. It was during that the Iowa baseball game that they had at the Field of Dreams. I'm 30 miles from the Field of Dreams. He had actually been Telcater. His agents are from this town. And he made a comment, I wish I could have been at the game in Dyersville. And I said, well, next, and I just happened to see that come across my feed. And I just commented, like, well, next time you're there, just swing north. We got a great Irish pub with some Star Wars stuff in. And he started looking at my stuff. And one night I'm sitting at home and the phone rings. And of course, these days, who calls a house? I wasn't expecting anybody to call my house phone. my wife picks up the phone and it's someone asking for me. It's like, well, hi, this is Stephen Stanton's agent. Mr. Stanton would like to talk with you. And so Stephen Stanton is the voice actor he does Grand Moff Tarkin in the animated series. He does Griff Halloran in the Resistance series. He also voices Obi-Wan Kenobi a lot in the older version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, not the younger version. And so he said hi, and he's like, I saw your stuff on Instagram, and I've got a helmet that we had for promotional purposes. You want it? Can I send it to you? You want to put it on display at your restaurant? I see you got other stuff on display. And so just because of us trying to fill up some space that we used to have tables in, I've gotten some interesting connections in that. So yeah, now we have a Lucasfilm produced signed helmet on display here.
Oh, signed too?
Yeah, sign and everything, and so that just tickles me pink, just seeing that every day. I'm like, that's a real piece of Star Wars, and kids look at it and they see it and like, oh, look at that, and it's a fun story to tell. And
if you keep this up, you're going to have a museum in your restaurant.
I'm also into Harry Potter and Marvel and DC and, all that other stuff. I'm definitely just sort of a nerd in general. And I've got other props that I've got a Mjolnir downstairs that's almost finished and it looks really good. And eventually we'll bring it up and display it. And,
nice.
I've got a couple of sculptures that I've made from Harry Potter and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've got a few shelves where I throw my helmets on and just, again, it's like a creative outlet. I use it as sort of a reset on clearing my head so I can think about the business a little bit better with a clearer head.
Well, I'll tell you, if anything happens to your restaurant, you could make a killing on Etsy just making stuff.
I do enjoy. I enjoy making. A lot of people are like, well, why don't you should go work for Lucasfilm? I'm like, yeah, I like doing what I do because I can do it at my pace, and stuff like that.
I love everything you're doing. That's so cool. If I'm ever in Iowa, which now I don't know when that will be, but I will definitely stop by. Tim, this has been so fun. I really appreciate you coming on. Let everybody know how they can find you and just anything you want to share.
Yeah, I guess our Instagram is @Fenley'sIrish. We do a lot on Facebook. We do our daily specials, our promotions, all that kind of stuff at Fenley's Irish Pub, Fenley'sIrishPub.com. Thanks again. I enjoyed this. That was fun.
All right, my friend. Bye, everybody.